And we are live, Senators.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is still February 18th of 2022. I am still Joe Benning, your chair of the committee, and we're going to shift gears and talk about Section 14. Troy Dare, I have you up first on the list. I noticed that you have a lot of folks that are also coming to join us. And I'd like to let all of you folks know that when we begin this conversation, there is a YouTube audience out there that none of us have any idea who that consists of. But as we are talking, in the event that you might be saying something in the way you normally talk about your job situation, and the committee members may understand it, but I red flag for myself that perhaps the audience out there in YouTube land doesn't. I'm not going to try to be rude, but I will stop your testimony and ask you to explain what X, Y, or Z means so that we can make sure everybody out there in YouTube land is on the same page we are. Troy, I don't remember when the last time was we talked about dry fire hydrants. It was always an interesting subject for me because I never knew what they were before. And now this is an opportunity for you to explain from scratch, given our YouTube audience out there, people probably scratching their heads going, what is a dry fire hydrant? And we can start the conversation from there. Oh, and the one other thing is when you introduce yourself, if you could just give us a little background on who you are and how you fit into this picture so people out in YouTube land understand who everybody is. Welcome back.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Troy Dare, Program Manager and Engineering Technician for the Rural Fire Protection Program, formerly known as the Dry Hydrant Grant Program. I actually am born and raised in Rockland, Maine, but I went to Vermont Technical College for civil engineering. And as a work study student, I did rural fire protection systems for the RC&Ds, Resource Conservation and Development Councils, as a work study student. And then when I graduated, they had the Dry Hydrant Grant Program funding. It started that same year. Lucky me. So I didn't even have to look for a job when I graduated. I just started as the technician for the program. And I've been here since the beginning. In 1998, it was proposed as a 5-year program. And here we are entering year 23. So that's a pretty big milestone. So that's where I was originally, like I said, the engineering technician. I was promoted to management when the VACD took over the program. I got 7 or 8 years ago now. So that's me, where I'm from. And now, actually, I was going to ask if there was anybody who, what's that?
Troy, when you first heard the term dry hydrant, did your eyeballs raise and say, what the heck is a dry hydrant?
Well, it's been a long time, so I don't know exactly how I reacted to that. I did have a classmate that was doing the job before me who kind of took me under his wing and kind of taught me some things. I'm not sure I really asked that question. I just kind of went with the flow, but it's actually, I've been asked that question many, many times over the years, and everybody, I think, can't remember who said it best. It was one of the task force members from long ago, but it's a big straw. That's really what a dry hydrant is. That's the most common system that we fund because they're the cheapest and easiest. As long as you have the water source to match it, that's what we put in. Sometimes we fund pressurized hydrants, just meaning that the water is higher than the spigot. And actually, can I share my screen real quick? Do I have that ability to share?
That was my next question to you. If you have a presentation, Alex knows how to share the screen, or he can do it himself. I know we're talking about Section 14 of the Capitol Bill.
This is just a simple schematic that I like to use to represent a dry hydrant. It very clearly shows you what you don't see underneath the ground and in the water. Like I said, it's a big straw. And the reason why it's called a dry hydrant is because here's the static water level comes up into the pipe where, static water level here. So it's dry from here up. So the fire department has to draw the air out, very similar to drinking out of a straw with a soda can. Like your cheeks kind of pull the air out, getting the fluid to your tongue, and then your tongue kind of pushes it down. Different but same. The fire truck has two pumps on it where it primes the air out of the system, getting that water up to the impeller of the main pump, the water pump, and as it pushes that water out to supply lines. It creates a siphon, and then the water, will actually is pushed into the truck actually by atmospheric pressure. So that's the too technical explanation of it, but it's a very, very simple in concept, just a big straw, function of the lift from surface of the water to the pump inlet, which you'll see a few pictures when I go over the report in a minute. You'll see these hooked up to by truck. So it's a function of the lift, which we like to see it around 10 feet. We can creep up around 15 or a little more, depending on what we need for a flow rate. It's a function of the distance and the entrance losses and accumulative friction loss in the pipe, which gives us a flow rate in gallons per minute. We design them to flow 1,000 gallons a minute in general, give or take, again, depending on the lift and things. So this is a typical dry hydrant here. Any questions thus far?
I think this is a wonderful diagram just to start out. And one of the possibilities in our YouTube audience is that we have school kids who are watching us. You used the term impeller, and I know that a propeller pushes air. An impeller, correct me if I'm wrong, is something that pulls air, which is maintaining the suction action to bring the water up through this pipe. Is that a safe description, or you got a different one?
Well, it really is kind of the same as a propeller. A propeller on a boat, takes water from here and kind of pushes it through, and then the boat actually goes. Kind of the same thing here. It's really the same thing. It's just a little bit of a different, physical shape. It's not exactly like a propeller, but this concept is the same, where the primer pump will draw the water past the impeller or propeller of a pump. It's really the same thing. Once that water gets past, then they start turning from the drive shaft of a fire truck and starts to push that water out. So it's really kind of doing the same thing, but for a different reason, kind of pushing it out, discharges it. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that's great. And this diagram is perfect for explaining what a dry hydrant is.
Were there any other questions? I can only see so many people here. Let me just stop sharing so I can see. Were there any other questions from anybody else? I see some familiar faces here.
Just excuse me, it has to be below the frost, right? I mean, below the frost line, otherwise it would freeze. So it's below that. Yeah.
Yes and no. Yes, the water line. Okay, so let me get back to that schematic real quick for you, just so I can.
It looked like it was below the frost, because if it frees up, you're screwed then.
Yep, it's hold on one second. Let me share again real quick. So this particular picture is drawn so that, so let's say, for example, the frost line is roughly here. So this is supposed to be 4 to 6 feet. So 4 to 6 feet, here's the frost line in general.
Okay.
So now naturally the static water line is down here below that.
Down there, yeah.
Now, and that's what you're referring to, Senator Mazza, but sometimes the water level can get up, depending on contours and things. What we do is, if, let's say, for example, this is how I do it anyway, if the water line meets the frost line anywhere, if it's anywhere in here, we use blue board insulation. I cut it into squares and things, and I kind of insulate the water below that wherever it meets the frost line. And in some cases, I may actually have a picture on the report to show you, but in some cases, if the water line is too close to the surface, what I do is I use an 18-inch or a 2-foot culvert, and I put that in here and I extend that above the ground. So it kind of comes up right into here. You can see there'll be like a culvert sticking up here. And I do have a picture I think I can show you that helps. And then I put insulation in that. So it's almost like extending that insulated ground up higher. It still can get a small little sheet of ice where the cold air works its way down into the pipe. But once that sheet forms, it kind of, it disconnects the cold, the transfer of the cold, or the radiation of the cold. So then when you go to prime it, that sheet will break up and stuff. It's the difference between a chunk of ice or just a little sheet of ice is really what it comes down to. So there are ways to insulate them if this frost coverage isn't there naturally, which is greater than or equal to 4 feet. We like to see at least 4 feet from this water level to the finished grade. So that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Yep.
So moving on, if there's nothing else, I'm going to share the report here, the latest, greatest report. If I can find it here. Okay. And this actually I shared with your committee assistant there. I sent this out. You should have it available to you, I believe, if you're want to look at it on your own screen. So this is the 1998 through 2021 report. This includes all of the money up to not including the last fiscal years. I'm going to let Jill speak to that here shortly. So the numbers here, let me just go through the pictures first. So here, what you're seeing are actually mostly craftsberry. Craftsberry, at this point in the program, historically we funded new systems mostly in the first 10, 12 years. But then when Hurricane Irene came through, she destroyed a lot of hydrants, especially along the belt line there, the Bridgewater area, a lot of the rivers and stuff, destroyed a lot of hydrants. And it opened up the door for repair, replacement type of projects. And then most recently, we've added upgrade, or we like to call them upgrade grants. So for example, if your town has old dry hydrants with 4.5 or 5-inch substandard type connections, or the heads have failed over the years for whatever reason, we will help cost share with those upgrades. Craftsberry, I think they upgraded, God, I think it was 19 hydrants or something like that, where they put all new heads on. And also our program allows us to give discounted parts too, which is kind of unheard of in the fire service, but we actually give discounts on hydrant heads, strainers, any hydrant specific stuff. Over the years, I've kind of found the best manufacturer, made in America, which is a good thing. We like that, out of Dadeville, Alabama, where, we just order them. They're shipped right to the fire department. So a lot of these, what you're seeing, we require a flow test, meaning a back flushing test of the newly upgraded or repaired hydrant, just like we do new systems. So this is all the pictures they sent me of all of their back flushing tests, which are wonderful. We love to see these kind of pictures. And then here is the state map. Let me just zoom out just a little bit here. So this map represents towns who have received state money. So even if they're white, doesn't mean they don't have dry hydrants, it just means they've never received any funding from us for a hydrant. And a lot of these white spaces, you might ask why they're white. Some of them have benefited from the federal money that we have, which I'll go over in a minute. But a lot of these don't actually have fire departments, so they don't have that local capacity to apply and things like that. Also, some of these may have applied in the past and then their project wasn't done for whatever reason. So, that's why a lot of these are still clear. But as you can see, we've put hydrants or funded hydrants in 215 out of the 255 towns. So, and this actually is almost, it's over 1,000 now, including the money and the grants that Jill will speak to in a minute. But we've done over 1,000 hydrants with state money, over $2 million over the years. This little block shows when Hurricane Irene came through, grants we gave out just that following year. We gave out almost $65,000 in repairs for those damaged systems. And then this sheet here is the list, the grand list, I guess you could call it, by county, showing which towns received grants, how many they've received over the years. You can see some of them are in the teens. In some towns, and then shows how many, 20 towns in Addison County, 85 grants. Then you have the total here, kind of a accompaniment to that map I just had there on the screen. And we also ask for, in our paperwork, we ask for, quotes on, how was your experience with the program, things like that. Over the years, we've seen, quotes from pretty much all walks of the program. Here's one from Brian Schmidt in Townsend. Just a quick one there. Thankful to this program. I've been working with him for years. A list of our task force members here. Any questions so far? Anything, guys?
What are they all they have to be near a lake, right? Or a pond or something?
No, we put them in streams as much as we prefer not to. River and streams, they do go in river and streams. They're a little more problematic and higher maintenance.
Now they wouldn't use them in the summertime, right? Because they would just go direct to into the water.
Not necessarily. A hydrant is a time saver no matter what season it is. They're most valuable in the winter because of ice and snowbanks, like you said. But in the summer, you still don't want to have to put multiple lengths of suction hose to get down over a long bank. I mean, they're placed and they're meant so that one or two firefighters, maybe some of the firefighters that are joining us here can speak to this, but it's meant to for one or two firefighters to pull a suction line off, hook up to that hydrant, prime the system, and flow water. They are time savers and energy savers all year round.
They use that to fill their trucks, right? Or their tankers. They don't use it because they're not a fire there. They just use it to fill their tankers.
That depends on proximity, Senator Mazza. If the dry hydrant is within 1,000 feet of the structure fire, whatever fire, they should be able to run direct lines. It varies depending on fire department stuff, but that depends on the proximity to the fire. And so just to speak to that, there's the immediate service area of a dry hydrant is within 1,000 feet. The secondary service area is within 3 road miles in a circle, so for 1.5 miles in any direction. So the further you get from that water source, yes, you may have to shuttle. Dry hydrants in general are meant for, fires first and foremost, and then training tools for new firefighters. You can use them for training tools. They help with fire insurance and things like that. But they would potentially, if the fire was close enough, run water directly from the hydrant through a series of either trucks or whatever to the fire. Like I said, one of the firefighters could probably speak a little better to that here in short. Does that answer your question, Senator Mazza? Okay. So this, if there's no other questions, this special cases map, we've called it ever since 2000. We have our state money helps to leverage federal dollars, which is the volunteer fire assistance grants from the U.S. Forest Service via the Vermont Forest Parks and Recreation. The federal money comes in at 50-50 match. As some of you probably know, that's usually kind of the standard for federal money is 50-50. And what we're able to do is the fire departments are really, depending on the department, of course, really 25% is really the number that's easiest for them to match. So what we do, Jill and I, when we get these federal grants and these state grants and stuff, so what we do is we kind of combine them. We find an expensive project where the match, the local match is enough to match the state 25% and the federal 50 as well. And my time, Jill's time, and everybody's time really counts as state match. So it just makes it good because we can use a lot of this federal money, and the fire department of the town doesn't have to match more than 25%, which is sometimes make or break for these projects. So this shows the pretty much the same thing as those other pages. Here's the map of all the towns who have received federal money from us over the years. Here are the county lists on towns and how much and things. Also a project highlight here from West Paulet showing a tank filter system that was put on the bank here. And any questions on that page at all, or this picture here or anything? Okay. And
Committee,
then
I'm going to
just
ask if you have any questions to just shout right out because I can't see everybody on the screen either.
yeah, I can only see a couple people here. So and then just project highlights. We love pictures. We like people doing projects and things like that. I want to point out that not only do the grants provide systems for for fires and for training and all these things, but they're also community projects. They're fire department projects. They're town projects. Most of the time you got a handful of fire department people, their wives, their kids, they're all there for the day, and I like to think that, our program helps with the recruitment and retention problem that kind of has haunted the fire service as long as I can remember. I don't have any on this report, but there's a lot of pictures of, the fire chief's son there during the inspection, or the fire chief's daughter there helping out and stuff. They got a big smile on their face. I like the fact that, our grant projects are small enough, but important enough where the fire department in the town can gather up their community and their members to do these. Trying to see if I had a picture of the installation here. I don't on here. So then the last page here is we also allow for a public notice, or ask for a public notice, so that not only legislators like yourself will see the projects on. It used to be in the newspaper. We asked for newspaper articles. As you know, those are becoming old hat. Now it's more Facebook posts and online stuff. So what I do is I go online to the fire department's Facebook page, and I kind of clip those off. Here's a note about the upgrades for Craftsbury. Here's another one for West Rutland when they did a back flush on it. Another article here. And then this is just a little section here meant to show that our rural fire protection systems are good year round. You know, they're the most important in the winter when everything's frozen up, but they're resources for the fire department year round.
Troy, your pictures of Craftsbury, I'm surprised you didn't have a picture of Senator Ingalls up there looking to cut the ribbon or something in a ceremony.
Well,
I know where those hydrants are, so.
there's a lot of them. I've been worked with Randy Calderwood, and
Yeah.
you know, tragedy, we lost him up there. Boy, what a tragedy.
Yeah,
You
he was
know,
a good guy. Randy was a good guy.
one of the greatest guys I ever worked with, really quite a tragedy to lose him. And also Art Gutzman too. He was a fun guy to hang out with too when I went up there. So,
Yeah.
you know, we got some new management up there, just as effective. Just, you know, I miss Randy and, you know, Art here, you know, Walter Gutzman, excuse me, Walter.
Yeah, I was just saying, I thought it was Walter.
Yes, Walter. Just I have so many people in my mind. I knew it was Gutzman and I could picture him, but Walt. Any questions on that? That's pretty much all I had as far as the dry hydrant 101 in my report.
How much
Jill,
you
did
asked
wanna
for?
add?
How much money?
It was
What?
Jill, it was 100,000, correct, for the 2 years? Yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jill. I'll let you chime in here.
Jill, as you're coming on board with us, just a reminder, if you could give us a little bio about yourself so folks know who you are and how you fit into the picture. I know we're also going to be inviting you back next week for a more substantive conversation on the conservation districts, but welcome back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm the executive director of the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts, and we're actually in the 9th year of hosting the Rural Fire Protection Program, which we inherited from the RC&D Council. So I'm the one who helps grant the fundraising and reporting and financial parts of the program with Troy. So I was going to just give you very briefly, because I want you to hear from the other people who are with us. Just in general, since we inherited the program, for capital funds, we've spent $793,183 to date. And we still have a little bit of a surplus from last year, which is why we're not asking you for more money. We're asking you for $100,000 for 2023. Generally, our grant size, we used to give many grants of small size. Our average when the ACD inherited the program was $2,159. And now in 2022, so far, it's $5,429. So just to give you a sense, we're doing fewer but much more complex projects. I think that's enough for me. I want you to have time to hear from everybody else. Unless you have any questions.
You just have to be careful of announcing that you have a little bit of surplus money, because our counterparts in the House may try to claw that back somehow.
It's only a surplus from 2020. We're into 2021 spending now. We just haven't completely spent down the 2021 grant. So it's not years of surplus. You know, we already took care of that in previous years where we had reduced the amount.
And I actually have a lot of rollover applications from last year still in the hopper that should soak up, you know, because there's always, you know, a lot of projects get extended for whatever reason, especially now they've gotten more complicated. I think I have 40 projects that are still in my lap from years before to work my way through. And I haven't even put out the application for 2022 yet. So
we just let them know the money is committed. That's all that they need to know.
Right. Money's committed.
Absolutely. We're being really careful to not end up with large surpluses. And that's why, you know, we spend a lot of time number crunching. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week as well.
Thanks for coming. I have Tom Mcclay listed as the next person to talk, but I don't know, Troy, whether you had a different version of who you wanted the chronological order.
Well, is Tom on with us? He was going to call in.
I don't see him yet.
Okay, he may not. He doesn't have the greatest time with his computer, so I gave him the call-in information, and he said he was going to try, but I haven't heard from him. So
okay, that will move me then to Bill Sanborn, who is vice chair, as I understand it. Tom being chair.
Yep.
But Bill, I don't know whether you've ever been before Senate institutions before. You may have.
I have not.
Oh, well, welcome to Senate institutions.
Thank you.
Bill, did you just want to speak to your experience with the program in the past? Actually, just to let you know, Bill Sanborn was a was a grant recipient in Maidstone. I worked with him just as a grant recipient for a handful of years, and then I roped him into being a task force member. So that's where he came on board. So actually, Bill and Skip and I think there's the only other person here have that broad perspective on the program. They've been on the receiving end and they've been on the management end. So. if you
Well,
want to
Bill,
speak
we
to him.
always take a moment as you come on. We first identify you and where you're from and how you fit into the picture, but I will also extend to you my condolences because you've got Senator Ingalls as one of your senators there, and we like to pick on each other. So
I'm sure you do.
welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very brief. I've been in the fire service probably most of my adult life in one form or another. I spent 20 years in the New Hampshire Fire Marshal's office, but I've also been a volunteer firefighter for a number of years. And for 7 years, I was in Winooski when I worked in the Burlington area. I just want you people to understand, like I do, that this program is a great program. I've never seen one like it. When I came to the state of Vermont and heard about this, I kind of jumped on it. I'm a firm believer in the program. It not only supports towns financially, but Troy helps with his engineering support and with help in permitting, which is a big deal sometimes for these projects. As you have already heard, dry hydrants make it much easier and faster for fire departments to get water where it's needed, when it's needed. And especially, as Troy said, in the winter months. This in turn, as you know, cuts down on property loss, saves lives, and helps people from being injured. And I want to thank you people for your support in the past, and I would encourage you to keep supporting us in the nature that you have. Thank you very much.
Bill, thank you very much for coming. How long have you lived in Maidstone now?
22 years, I believe. I came here in 98.
Do you know Ellen Ramsdell?
I do.
Well, she's the old court clerk down there in Guildhall, and I tell this story frequently that the Guildhall courthouse is one of the last places you could walk in the door and she would ask you what you wanted in your coffee. And I've always appreciated that. So if you run into her, tell her I said hello if you would.
I certainly would do that, Senator.
Thank you, sir. I have Christine Kaiser listed next.
Christine's on the phone.
Hi, Christine. I'm Joe Benning. Welcome to Senate Institutions. You are now in possession of the floor, and we'd like you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you fit into the picture before you launch into whatever you have to say about the program.
Christine Kaiser. I live in Stowe. I got involved with the dry hydrant program some 20 years ago. I'm a former member or council member of RC&D, and I was with them for 13 years, and then we sunset, and Troy needed a home, so he went to VACD, and I've always been really impressed with the program and also impressed with Troy, and so I wanted to follow and continue with the program, so I stayed on as a member of the fire thing. I know nothing about fires, so it's I'm not a firefighter, so I've been learning. That process is learning. But the dry hydrant program, to me, is a very valuable program, and we do appreciate your funding and source, and Troy is doing a great job, and the pandemic has sort of made it very difficult to attend meetings face-to-face. Tom Mcclay is a wonderful person and I know he's a wonderful fireman. He's been with it for a long time, and not to be able to spend time with Tom and the rest of the group face to face has been very difficult. But we seem to be, carrying on. So thank you once again. And I did attend another institution many years ago with Troy, which was fun. So thank you.
We try to keep it humorous here. Sometimes we go overboard and get in trouble, but we do try to keep it humorous. I'm curious, you're not a firefighter. How do you fit into the program?
That's a good question. As Beth Ann Finley's, Pete Lamphere from Lamoille said they need a warm seat. So I guess I'm the warm seat. Because of the relationship of dry hydrants to fire protection, I think that is the way I fit in.
Well, be careful. You when you occupy an unoccupied seat, you really tend to get wrapped into other things you never intended. So be very careful, and welcome back to Senate institutions. Thanks for coming to join us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Troy, I have Walter Bothfeld scheduled next on my list. Is that your intended
Sure.
chronological order?
Sure. If Skip has something to say, we'd love to hear it.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Skip.
Okay. Skip, Walter Bothfeld Jr., fireman, Cabot Fire Department. Been on the department since 1983, so it's pushing the 40-year mark. Troy and I have worked together on these dry hydrants ever since they started. Tom Mcclay got me going because he's, neighboring Marshfield department. We put in, we have 13 of them in all right now. Last year, we put in what I call quite an important hydrant. Part of our town is on the border of Joe's Pond. And there's one section, there's probably 30 camps on that road. And you can see the water when you drive down by there, but we could never get close to it. We'd have to go and haul water in, actually, if we had a fire there. So this last year, we figured out a way to get a hydrant into Joe's Pond, which will be a godsend for all the people there, because it helps their insurance and makes our job just that much easier.
So Skip, I've got a question. I have a question for you then. My friend and colleague, or former colleague in the legislature, Kitty Toll, has a little camp on an island right there. How do they get fire service on that island? I'm curious.
That's a real good question. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's in the town of Cabot or the town of Danville, and I've never been to it, but she's got plenty of water all around her. It's just getting there to do the job. I'm not sure how they do that.
That's interesting. I never thought of that before. Well, thank you very much for coming to join us.
Thank you.
Mike Derosa, I see you're back with us again, and you are still the director of the Division of Fire Safety, as I recall. Are you in charge of making sure these folks are all on the up and up, or what? How do you fit into this project?
Oh, pretty much. For the record, I'm Mike Derosa, the Director of Fire Safety. I want to thank the committee for the many years of support that you've given to the program, and I can't speak to the program any better than Troy and Jill and Bill and Mr. Bothfield here, and Allison. Or Christine, sorry. Great group of people. The dry hydrant program, for as little money that goes into it, you can see that the impact that comes out of this program is very substantial. And the other thing about the dry hydrant program, it does allow the rural fire departments to do training as well, right, with water. So they train using these dry hydrants as well. So it gives them the hands-on opportunity. So I don't have anything to add other than I want to thank the committee and thank all of them for all the hard work they do in support of this program. And that's about it. A great group of people here.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you coming by. Committee, any questions before we let these folks go? Well, folks, appreciate you coming by. Troy, don't forget the advice. Make sure the House Committee knows that money is already spoken for.
Allocated. Yes.
That's the word, yes.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for having us. We look forward to seeing you next
Thank you.
week.
Thank you
All
for
right.
what you do. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much
Thank you.
for what you do.
Yes, thank you, guys. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
We're gonna shift gears, committee, and bring on John Adams, who's gonna talk with us about Section 17, the Agency of Digital Services at the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. John, welcome back to Senate Institutions. I don't know if you need any screen sharing or you have something you'd like to present that is in a format we need to accommodate you for. But Alex McCracken is our committee assistant. He can help you out with that. Looks like he does, and you are.
Great. So you have my screen.
We
you can
do.
see my screen right now. Fantastic. So I'm John Adams, the director for the Center for Geographic Information, a part of the Agency of Digital Services. I was in your committee last year, and since then I have grown a beard. So if I don't look familiar.
I should probably, John, you weren't on the screen earlier, but first I'd like to remind the committee, when you were with us last time, we had a lot of fun with Vermont Parcel Viewer, as I recall, and certain committee members looking up their own residential and business areas in the satellite imagery. That was lots of fun. I should also tell you that in the world of YouTube, we have an audience out there that we don't have the foggiest idea who they are. And I like to assume, for instance, that there's school kids out there that are learning this process for the first time. So as you're going along, if you're saying something that we might understand, but it red flags for me that perhaps they don't, I might interrupt your testimony just to ask you to explain what X, Y, or Z is. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to make sure everybody out there in YouTube land is actually on board with what we're talking about. So welcome back.
Thank you. Absolutely. Right. I believe last year the committee members may have been accusing each other of growing tomato plants and such.
Right.
But so thank you for having me back and for your support of the orthophotography program. Orthophotos are essentially aerial photographs that are corrected to remove any distortion so that they're accurate representations of Vermont that we can use to measure distances. They're not to be confused with ornithophotos, which would be photos of birds. Will not forget, I think it was maybe my first year in this job, and a certain committee, an unnamed senator asked me why we were spending money taking photos of birds. That is not what we're doing. These are aerial photographs, not pictures of birds, although that would be a pretty cool job to have. We are in the second year of a 5-year acquisition cycle, an annual request of $125,000. You can see a few of our specifications there. We collect in color and infrared, and we have 30 centimeter resolution with a targeted 15 centimeter resolution, and I can show you what that looks like afterwards. I think one of the key parts of our acquisition is that we look to collect imagery with no leaves, no snow, and no clouds and no flooding. And if you think about that, in Vermont, that is a very, very narrow window, maybe a few hours in April sometimes. Any guesses on where this Essex County location is here on the screen?
Well, it looks to me like that's the Connecticut River. Am I right so far?
You're right so far.
And then I'll skip ahead to say that looks like the Maidstone Guildhall area.
That is correct.
Oh, how about that? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I know that. I happen to be a metal detector, and I noted that over across the river was a fort that was built by colonists back in the 1750s, right next to a graveyard in Groveton. And I was studying every map I could find to see where that fort was located. And it was located at the spot where I think it's the Ammonoosuc River comes in to join the Connecticut. And this picture is very close to that location.
Wasn't sure if someone would guess this, but you guessed it exactly right and very quickly. So nice work.
Did I ruin your surprise?
No. I can go through and keep. I'm not sure how many more images we have, but if the committee likes that type of thing, I'm happy to throw in some trivia here if we want. Here's a bit of history of the Orthophoto program. It goes back to the mapping program in 1968. At the time, it was housed in the tax department, primarily used to help tax maps and find property lines and boundaries. In 1974, we began ortho rectifying them so that they removed the distortion. And VCGI took over the program from the tax department really in the mid 2000s, but officially in 2016. I believe as of this year, we have approximately 40,000 unique users a month, either downloading it or accessing the imagery via web apps, which is a huge difference. I think in 1992, when VCGI started, we had about 109 customers that were sort of very either professionals or academics sending mail-in orders for data, and now we have over 40,000 folks accessing this on their phones and computers and tablets. Before starting this last acquisition, we pulled together a work group of some of our key user groups and then sent out a survey asking sort of what people's priorities were. Do we need to keep collecting leaf-off imagery, which is much harder to collect than leaf-on imagery? We can collect leaf-on imagery all summer, but leaf-off is that tiny window. The answer was a resounding yes. You do need to keep collecting leaf-off imagery. There was, requests for the main requests we got were for higher resolution as well as higher frequency than every 5 years. We don't have the we wouldn't have the funds to do higher resolution 15 centimeter collection statewide or do it at a higher frequency. So what we're trying to do this time for the first time is try to collect the entire state within a couple of years at a slightly lower resolution, 30 centimeters, so something between these two, and then work with the regional planning commissions and others to target 15 centimeter areas. So you can imagine, people ask for higher resolution imagery. They probably don't need it for the entire state. A lot of forested areas really are mostly talking about their developed villages and downtowns where they tend to prioritize it. So that's our strategy this time. Our last spring, we had hoped to collect more than this, but I don't know if you remember last April, we got a pretty big dump of snow late in April, and then before we knew it, we had leaves popping out. So this was the only area we were able to collect. We'll be playing it by ear and seeing what we can collect based on conditions, but our priority will be Rutland and Windsor County, since that imagery right now dates back to 2016 and is due for refresh. In terms of availability and users, we offer it at no cost in the public domain, and it's available for download and as web services. This is great for a lot of our small businesses across the state, engineering firms, surveyors. They have all access to this, and they can use it in their for commercial purposes. You can see most state agencies make use of our imagery, municipalities, regional planning commissions, and many, many more. In terms of historic imagery, we don't actually use any capital funds for historic imagery, but we do manage some of the state's historic imagery assets within the program and have been trying to collect more of it over the year as opportunities arise. So we do have statewide 1962 imagery that if you follow the link on the slide there, it'll take you to a post that we have and show you how to access some of it. Any guesses on where this location is here? You can see it in 62 and more recently here.
I almost want to say that's Orleans County, but I don't. I'm looking at the track and the what evidently is fairgrounds, but I think the grandstand is not quite lined up. Come on, committee, where is this?
Colchester.
Where are the state fairgrounds?
That would be Rutland.
This is Rutland. So historic imagery, maybe not some of our highest or best use cases in some regards, but definitely what makes people the happiest whenever we post these. We receive a lot of emails and gratitude from folks who just love looking at this stuff. We are working with the Agency of Transportation and Vasara. So if you remember back at that sort of history of ortho imagery in Vermont, that first year we began collecting ortho rectified imagery was 1974. So we'll be working with them this summer to see if we can get that digitized and available online as part of that collection.
Have you reached the point yet, John, where you can take a map from, say, 1858 and then have it morph into a present day map or morph through the years as development took place?
Absolutely, and it's what we'll be trying to do eventually, I think, with that 1962 imagery, and then a lot of the other older maps. It's a georeferencing process where we can stretch and use our imagery as sort of the base map to do that with. Right now, it's still a fairly manual process. There's a lot of folks out there trying to find ways to use machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence to kind of recognize some of those features and do that in a more automated or semi-automated way. And I think they are coming along. So that'll be, I think, exciting when we can take some of that old imagery and then line it up and then tile it so that, you can do things like swipe between the two or use it in similar ways that which we use more current imagery or maps.
And do you have a link to your historic imagery collection?
Yes, if you follow the link on that learn more and access 1962 imagery, that should give you a little bit of the background and then explain, where or how you can access it.
Alex, are you able to pull that off individually and record it for our purposes?
Yes, it should be in the document that I sent you all earlier, but I can
Okay.
just pull out that link and email it separately.
I'd like to see it.
So we treat our orthoimagery collection, as a capital asset as part of our spatial data infrastructure. This is all set out by the Federal Geographic Data Committee. So we use them as sort of the guidelines and standards by which we follow. These are the different themes that they set out, and you could see imagery is one of the themes that we manage. From imagery, we can combine it with things like our elevation data, so our LiDAR, and derive other products like our high resolution land cover, which we'll be using to improve Vermont's hydrography data, hopefully within the coming year or so. Plenty of other uses. I included here another link to the Parcel Viewer, which is probably maybe the easiest way just to view or stream some of the imagery. Just a reminder, when you pull up the map, the imagery won't be there. It's only when you zoom in that it'll appear. Another more recent one that in the past month we just application we just helped the tax department with, reusing those same imagery services, is the what we call the span finder. So to help folks with tax season, especially those now that there have been changes, I think, with the renter rebate, that people aren't getting the landlord certificate, but they still need to provide the span number. So tax department was wondering, how do we make that as easy as possible? So with the span finder, type in your address, it'll go right to the parcel with the imagery, show you that address, and give you that span number. So that imagery sort of helps as a confirmation to make sure that we're talking, about the right place, right address, and that people are entering in the right span number.
Well, that's the State House dome in the lower right-hand corner.
That is, yeah. I wasn't going to include this on the trivia here, but that's correct. And that concludes the slides I prepared. I've added a few more links if anyone's interested in checking any of these topics out. Again, another link to the historic imagery there as well. So happy to answer any questions or do any live demos of anything, if anyone's interested.
Committee, any questions? I can't see everybody while the screen share is up, so if you have a question, just shout out. John, how often do you have to update your maps?
I guess continuously, in terms of our parcel data that gets done on a weekly basis. We also work with E911 and release that data on a weekly basis as well. So those are probably the two that receive the most frequent update cycle. And because the way most people now access it is through sort of streaming it. So in the same way that you would stream a movie through Netflix, as opposed to going to the video store and renting it, people are streaming our maps, our data feeds, as opposed to before they used to download it, which is putting it on their local computer. In the same way you might have a DVD of a movie. Now they're streaming the map so they can get the most up-to-date data as soon as it's available. The imagery gets updated on a annual cycle as that gets delivered to us in sort of one big chunk in a hard drive. And we have to process it and then tile it so that it becomes efficient, or we find a way to get it through on the internet without sending everyone the raw imagery, which is fairly large in size.
How many people do you have in your department doing that?
In terms of our imagery program, that's really operated by one person, Steve Sharp.
Wow.
Very talented. We're lucky to have him and his knowledge of photogrammetry. And that is probably, still a relatively small part of his job. We do have this down pretty well in terms of a process, and we reuse as much as possible in terms of those processes that will process tile and upload this imagery and serve it out. Of course, a lot of his other job is maintaining the infrastructure and programs that allow for all of this to exist. But in terms of imagery specifically, that's probably 10 to 20% of his time.
So if Senator Ingalls in his real estate business were to sell 5 properties next week, can you walk through the process of how that set of sales gets entered into and eventually onto the maps that you're dealing with, especially in Vermont Parcel Viewer?
Absolutely, and it's a great question. Currently, we have been updating parcel data in terms of the ownership attribution on an annual basis by joining it with the grand list. So the ownership information will just be the grand list. However, throughout the year, we're getting little updates on line corrections, or, sometimes there's no match to a span. So as things get subdivided, we'll work with towns and get that updated data. We are very interested working with the tax department in their new, I think they're calling it VPI, their integrated property tax management system, in getting more real-time updates so that those transfers, which are published on a weekly basis, but so that we can find a way that you can see the grand list data as well as any of the transfers as they come through. So that's, I think, fairly high on our priority list for the parcel program, is finding a way to integrate some of that transfer data. So on a weekly basis, you'll be able to maybe select a property, you'll see what it was on the last grand list, and then if there were any transfers since then.
So 20 years ago, data coming into your department would have come in through the front door in an envelope. How do you receive things, and what is the process with the personnel that you have that translates incoming information onto the final product?
It depends on the product. So for parcel data, there's a form online that they fill out certain fields, and then they will upload a file. Parcel data is not very big in size. For some of the imagery, we actually do receive a hard drive. It's very large in size in terms of raw, in its raw format. So that isn't something we would be able to just download. So they send us a hard drive, and then we process it and put it up onto our servers. So it depends on the type of data. There are other types where we have automated sort of connections, and every once a week, our computers will go retrieve data from E911 system, for example, and then make some transformation, remove fields that shouldn't be made publicly available, and then make that available publicly to anyone.
Makes you wonder where we'll be 20 years from now. Committee questions for John? John, as you know, the capital bill is the vehicle for this discussion. And right now the capital bill is still on the other side of the building in the House. And when they make their tweaks to it from whatever the governor's recommend was, if you are impacted by that in some fashion and want to come back and have another conversation, seeing if we can't correct whatever tweak they've made, by all means, reach out, and we hope to see you again in any event. So thanks for coming and joining us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
We'll see you. Alex, I believe that concludes the committee's business.